Greetings, YouTube! The Doctor is in. Dr. Urias Papers here, coming at you with another commentary on, well, Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop role-playing games and all kinds of stuff. So we are, I think we're live. Let's check it out, see if we are. I've got my iPad over here on the other side. Oh, look at that. We got a commercial. Looks like for Factor. For some kind of meal. They're microwavable meals. They're just high salt. Oh, we got another one. They're just high salt and high protein, and that's about it. So, okay. All right. Looks like we're live. Let me get some housekeeping stuff done here, and then we will get started. We are going to talk about this article up here right now about Diamond, and I've got a specific order that I want to do this in because we've got to put context into this story. So that's what we're going to go through. Okay, let me get this done here. I'm getting a lot of commercials tonight. I'm shocked. Okay, and all right, there we go. I think we got it all now. I have to be careful the way I put my hands up because the camera that I'm using has got an AI function in it that responds to my hand gestures, and I haven't figured out yet how to turn it off. So we'll get to that when we get to that. All right, we got 4 likes already. That's awesome. Let's see what our friend Galactus has to say tonight. Let's fix our mic. I just got this windshield for our mic. Let's see what our friend here has to say. He's going to say... All right, there you go. You serve me now. That is Galactus. He says, you serve me now. Let's fix this again. It's going to fall off a lot. So you serve me now. That's correct. So let's start talking about these particular articles here. So this article here was the start of this. If you don't know, Diamond Comic Distributors was the largest distributors of comic books and toys and collectibles and tabletop role-playing games. Now, they were not the distributor for Wizards of the Coast, kind of. They did distribute some of Wizards of the Coast stuff, but they distribute a whole bunch. And we're going to go over all the things that they distribute during our time here tonight. But this is the article that started it off for me. And this came from the Paizo website. And if you don't know, Paizo makes Pathfinder and Starfinder. So Paizo put this out, and they, on July 2nd, this summer, they said, as many of you know, Diamond Comic Distributors declared bankruptcy on January 14th. And we're gonna address that. Hundreds of game publishers, we're going to list all those, including Paizo, which is the owners of Pathfinder and Starfinder, have partnered with Diamond to sell their products into the book trade. So the way that this works with Diamond is Diamond sells things on consignment. The manufacturer, the company, let's say the company, they're the publisher. They make a product like a book. Okay, so we'll call it the Starfinder Player Core because that was one of the things that was affected by this. So Starfinder Player Core was published by Paizo. So Paizo wrote it, they own it, they have the copyright on it, they have trademarks, all that stuff. They paid a printing company to print a bunch of copies. Now, Paizo does not have its own distribution company. So for them, it's very hard to distribute things to big stores and Amazon, whereas because they would have to pay all the shipping costs and everything. Now, they can ship things from their own website. They have that ability, and you can buy things off of their website. But if you want to go to Barnes & Nobles or Booktopia or Target or Walmart or wherever and buy this book, then it has to be distributed. It also gets distributed through consignment to Amazon and Amazon fulfillment centers. So you can go to Amazon and order this book, and it'll be at your house, I don't know, a day or two. Depends on if it is in the fulfillment center. Now, what consignment means is Paizo would give that book over to Diamond Comic Distributors. They hand them a large order of books, a pallet of books, and then Diamond will sell those books and distribute those, that is, ship those books to these big box stores and to Amazon. So the book, let's say the book sells for $100. Diamond would sell it to a distributor, a secondhand store, for $50. Diamond would collect a percentage of that, probably like, I don't know, $5-10, probably like more like $5. And then Paizo would get the other like $40 to $45. The store, so if this went to Barnes & Noble, the store would sell that for $100. So they would make $50 off of it. And, these books probably print for $5-10 at the most. So that's how the thing happened. Well, Diamond declares bankruptcy, and as a result of that, they have all of this product from all of these different companies, including Paizo, including Marvel Comics, including DC Comics. Again, we're going to go over all that. And they have decided that they're going to hold all of that product in their warehouses, and they're going to sell it themselves without giving any money back over to the original publishers and the original company owners, and then they're going to use that to pay off their creditors, because they owe a bunch of money to a bunch of banks. So going back to this, Diamond, so we're back up at the first paragraph here. So Diamond has also sold Pathfinder and Starfinder into Amazon for us. Paizo has stopped shipping products to Diamond. So this was in July. So they just stopped, which means that none of their stuff is going in any major bookstore or Amazon. And that also probably includes a lot of game stores and comic book stores. So what this means is that our August releases, that is Paizo's August releases, will not be widely available at major bookstores or on Amazon. While these sites will likely continue to list products for sale or pre-order, most orders for these titles will not be able to be fulfilled. So you could go to your store and you could order the Starfinder Player Core book, and they could put the order in. They have to put the order in with Diamond, and Diamond's not going to give it to them because these are all locked up and everything's locked up in court right now. So to stay up to date with our collection, please stop by your favorite local game store and ask them to order our upcoming releases. And this probably is the local game stores are getting them directly from Paizo. So now the big problem with this is Gen Con happened about 3 weeks after this. And so Paizo had to bring a whole bunch of books with them. These are all the August releases. Starfinder Player Core is a big one. And the next big one is the Starfinder GM Core. And then the Pathfinder Battlecry book was another one. There was some flip map stuff and other things. But all these products, which is basically all the products for Paizo that are available for release in both August and September, were affected by this. So Gen Con is the big, that's the big con event of the year. And Paizo had to bring a bunch of these books with them to sell because they're probably not going to be able to sell what they normally would. I can't guess what percentage of their sales were affected by this. Okay, so that puts into context. This, how I know about this is I saw this from Paizo because I do play a lot of Pathfinder. And I saw this, so I started looking into this. So let's go to this first article. And there's a link here, and that goes to this article right here. Diamond Comic Distributors declares bankruptcy. All right, so this was from January 14th, and this is from Bleeding Cool, and Bleeding Cool has been following this very well and in a very detailed manner, and that's where I've been getting the rest of my news for this. A couple other places, but Bleeding Cool is the main one. So they declared bankruptcy, And they stated that Diamond UK and Alliance Games may be bought by Canadian distributor Universal. So, Chuck Parker, president of Diamond Comic Distributors, has written to comic book stores and publishers with the news that Diamond Comic Distributors has declared Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So that's reorganization. That's not we're going out of business. It basically means we can't pay our bills, and we are eventually going to pay our bills, but we need to do some reorganization in order to pay our creditors, because they owed a bunch of money to a bunch of different places. So that Diamond UK, as well as the sister company and games distributor Alliance Games Distribution, have a commitment to be bought by Canadian comic distributor Universal Distribution. This comes after many major publishers left U.S. distribution with Diamond, including Marvel, Image, IDW, Dark Horse, and many other Boom Studios. The letter is as follows, and then they go through the letter. So that's what happened. They finally came. They owed a bunch of money to a bunch of banks. They couldn't pay it, and so in the U.S. you file Chapter 11 or Chapter 13. Chapter 13 is basically we're done. Chapter 11 is reorganization, and that's what they did. And they're just admitting they can't pay their bills, and the judge now has to take control and help manage them pay their bills in the best way that they can. Now, keep in mind that there's still a bunch of companies that are, because they're doing Chapter 11, they haven't gone out of business. There's still a bunch of companies that are sending their product to Diamond Comic Distributors in the U.S., and they are still putting them in a warehouse for consignment, which we explained. So they're just basically, that product is sitting there until they get an order from a store like Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Walmart or something, and then they sell them there, and that's when the money gets made. All right, so that's January 14th. And then this article gets published on January 15th. So these are the top 30 companies that Diamond owes money to. Top 30 companies Diamond owed money to when it went bankrupt, from Penguin to Bandai. So yesterday, Bleeding Cruel broke the news that Diamond Comic Distributors had declared bankruptcy, Chapter 11, as well as detail on Diamond UK and Alliance Games Distribution being sold to Canadian company Universal Distribution. Taking readings from across the industry, I stated that from conversations I have had, we will be talking high 8 figures at this point, and it seems to have been justified by the following list of creditors, with the 30 highest non-secured claims for a total of $31.7 million. And at the top is Penguin Random House, which was the distributor and publisher for Wizards of the Coast. If you don't know, you know now. Penguin and Wizards severed their ties and their business agreements earlier this year. And so Penguin is no longer distributing Wizards of the Coast books, Dungeons and Dragons things. And then there's a bunch of others. But there is a list down here, so let's go through this list. And it lists possibly how much money is owed to these people by Diamond Comic Distributors. So we've got Penguin Random House. We've got Bandai. Now I wanna look one thing up about Bandai, because I know Bandai is a toy company, but in addition, they might also I think they own Pokemon. Bandai, I believe, does own Pokemon. So that is another big problem that they had. And apparently they owe Bandai $4 million. Now, I don't know if that's $9 million in product or if that's an actual $9.2 million in cash for Penguin. I'm going to guess that is probably product. So we've got Bandai on here. There's $4 million worth of product. National Entertainment Collectibles, that's a big collectible company, $2.6 million. Kin Mold, I don't know what that is. Disney Consumer Products, 1.7 million. There's Hasbro. So they were distributing some Hasbro stuff. It was probably toys, because it's Hasbro, and right below that is Wizards of the Coast. So it's $1 million to Hasbro they owed. Wizards of the Coast, they owed $914,000. I'm going to guess that's almost all product. And then there's Bandai Namco Toys and Collectibles, UPS. I imagine that's a bill. Catalyst Games. They're a Catalyst, I believe. What did they make? I'm looking this stuff up as we are talking here. Catalyst Games. They do, is it MechWarrior? And they also do Shadowrun. Let's see here. Catalyst Game, the Army Painter, yeah. Titan Publishing, Square Enix Holdings, Microsoft, the Pokemon Company International, Transcontinental, Beast Kingdom, Funko, which does Funko Pop, Publisher Services, bunch of different companies. Some of these companies like Catalyst, they can't afford to have, $500,000 or so worth of stuff sitting in a warehouse. So that got published on the 15th of January. Then on the 25th of June, so we're going to skip all the way forward because this was the first announcement for, let's get rid of this. This was the first announcement for all of this product being held hostage. So let's do this, held hostage. Let's back up here. So it says held hostage. This was the phrase that Fantagraphics used about Diamond Comic distributors, okay, and refusal to return the stock that Diamond had been holding on consignment for Fantagraphics and other publishers. Comics, trade paperback books, graphic novels, and merchandise that Diamond had received hadn't been paid for but wouldn't return. So these companies, remember, I said Diamond Comic distributors declared bankruptcy in January, but these companies kept sending their product to Diamond, and Diamond after January, after that declaration of bankruptcy, Chapter 11, continued to sell their product to stores, including Amazon and Target and Barnes & Nobles and all those stores. They continued to do that. And then all of a sudden, we get this report in June that they stopped doing that. And they stopped paying. And they were holding products. So they stopped paying. And so this Fantagraphics probably said, hey, we sent you a bunch of stuff. And where's our money? And Diamond said, we didn't sell anything. We're holding your stuff because we have to pay our creditors back. And the stuff that's in our warehouse is now ours. So let's see here. In new filed paperwork with the bankruptcy courts as part of its ongoing Chapter 11 bankruptcy proceedings, Diamond Comic Distributors, Inc., the debtor entity in this bankruptcy is outlining procedures for the sale of consigned inventory free and clear of all liens, claims, interest, and encumbrances, meaning they don't owe anybody anything, which is to say they are aiming to maximize value. Now, given that many of those people owed money are the publishers whose product would be liquidated by this action, there would seem to be some question as to whether it would maximize value for those to whom the debtor owes money, that is, who they borrowed money from. The matter will certainly be taken up by the court. So, consigned inventory is product that publishers and manufacturers allowed Diamond to hold in their warehouses so they could supply comic book stores instantly. Diamond hadn't ordered those products, but they held an agreed amount to supply stores quickly. So they sign a contract. So let's use Paizo again. Diamond signs a contract with Paizo that says when you, Paizo, publish a new item, a new product, a new book, whatever, that you agree to hand over a certain amount to us to sell a certain percentage of the print run. We're going to hold it in our warehouse and we're going to sell it and we can get it out instantly. So that's what's going on. And they're holding that product now. So the filed paperwork, they filed this with the court. says that they are in possession of significant inventory that was shipped on a consignment basis. The consigners have not satisfied the requirements under applicable law to perfect their interests in this consigned inventory. And that gives Diamond the right to transfer title to this inventory free and clear of the consigner's interests. So they're taking everything. They want to sell it, and then they have to turn that money over to their creditors. So the bankruptcy courts have not yet agreed to this, but I can see tremendous amount of pushback from publishers and lots of people looking to Titan Comics sitting on the unsecured creditors committee on the Chapter 11 bankruptcy procedure over this. So that came out in June. Now, we get this article from, I think this is from IC2, and this was June 30th. So that was 5 days after that. And the reason I point this one out is this is actually a list of all of the people that have stuff, all the companies that have stuff in Diamond's warehouse. I'm going to look over here a little bit. Let's see, we got 5 likes already. And let's just check out and see how many people have been looking at here. Okay, we got 8 views. That's okay. All right. So this is posted by Milton Greep, June 30th. This summer, there was a significant development. So this is kind of a reprint of the article that came out in Bleeding Cool. So there was a significant development affecting publisher clients of Diamond comic distributors and another major department. We round up Diamond bankruptcy news here. Diamond has requested the bankruptcy court to allow it to take ownership of consignment inventory in its possession and sell it for the benefit of the creditors. So there you go. Diamond listed 182 vendors with which it had consignment agreements, which typically provides, remember those agreements say you will take a percentage of a print run or a percentage of your inventory and you will hand it over to us and then we will sell it and give you money when we sell it. That's our agreement. So Diamond store inventory and sell it on behalf of the vendor, which retains ownership. Diamond is arguing that under bankruptcy law, it may take ownership and sell the inventory for the benefit of all of its creditors. The effect will be to make it impossible for those vendors to use that inventory to fulfill demand from retailers and to add the amounts Diamond owes these companies. So let's take a look down here. Oh, this is not the article. This is just a rehash of the last article. I do have an article in here, though, that does have a list of these 182 vendors that they have agreements with or contracts with. So let's go to the next article here. This is it right here. So this was July 2nd on N-World, and Diamond Distributors asks bankruptcy court for ownership of publishers' consignment inventory. So again, this is like a week after Bleeding Cool published their particular thing. So they're just going through this again. So here it's Chase Bank is the largest creditor for Diamond. So if Diamond took all this material that is in their inventory of their warehouses and sold it, the money that they made off of that would have to go to Chase Bank, more than likely. So, and this one says Diamond has listed 128 companies for which it currently holds consignment stock. So the previous article said they had 182 agreements, but they have 128 different companies that they're actually holding stock for. So let's look at this list, and here it is right here. It's quite extensive. It goes all the way down, and there are names in here that a lot of us should recognize. Now, these are in alphabetical order-ish. So a few of these when I get to one that I actually, Apex Publishing, I've heard of that one. Archie Comics, I've heard of that one. Bandai Entertainment, of course, we've all heard of that one. Let's see here. I haven't heard of these. Cheesy and Clore. Dark Horse Comics, DC Comics. Diamond Comic Distribution stock. Let's see here. Eros, Fair Square Graphics, Fantagraphic Books. Frank Miller presents that. I believe that's Frank Miller, the artist and comic book writer. Gen Manga Entertainment. So if you're a fan of manga magazines, that's another one. Goodman Games. Now, I can imagine that Goodman Games, which does Dungeon Crawl Classics, things like that, they're not a big company. And I don't think that they could actually afford to have that huge percentage, whatever that is, and whatever's in their agreement, being held. I don't, a lot of these companies run on very small margins, meaning that they don't make a lot of money off of their product, and they need to have revenue coming in all the time to pay their payrolls and their rent and for product for the future and things like that. So I'm guessing that Goodman Games probably can't afford this right now. And even if they get their inventory back, this happened at the end of June, and it's the beginning of September. So we've got 2 months that product has been sitting in a warehouse because this hasn't been resolved, and these companies haven't made any money off of any of this. And I can't imagine that their revenue stream, the interruption to their revenue stream, has not been pretty devastating to these companies. Green Ronin Publishing, so they make Mutants and Masterminds and a whole bunch of other stuff. Again, another company that's not very big that I would imagine can't function very well with this kind of interruption to their revenue. See, Heavy Metal Magazine, I think they just started publishing again. Image Comics are big ones. Let's see, Locust Moon, Man Cave Studios, Magnet, Marvel Comics, that's a big one. Marvel PRH, Net Comics, Onai Press, Paizo. And again, we all think Paizo is a big company, and they're a pretty big company, but their big products for the summer that were being showcased at Gen Con are stuck in some warehouse that Diamond owns. So I can imagine, again, they're working off of, pretty tight margins, and a 2-month, probably going to end up being at least a 3-month now. A 3-month interruption to their revenue stream is going to be pretty devastating to the company. Let's see here, Red Giant, so this is Steven Glicker. So he has a YouTube channel called Roll for Combat. He has made several videos about this as well. He owns Battle Zoo Publishing. He's got a bunch of books for like 5e and Pathfinder and things like that. And he's really not a big company either. So, and he said this sucks. This is terrible for him that he's got all of this product that's sitting in this warehouse that he just can't sell. So that's another bad one. And he said he owes people money. Let's see here. Slave Labor, Storm King, Superman, Sumerian Comics, Titan Comics, I've heard of them before. Ubi Workshop, Valiant Entertainment, another big comic company. And so, this is a big list, and there's some big names on this. A lot of them can absorb this. They could figure out ways to get around this, but some of them can't. Like Goodman Games and Green Ronin Games and Roll for Combat are going to have a hard time going around this. All right, so let's go to the next article here. And just want to take a quick look at, just take a quick look here. So this was published on July 13th, so this is about a week after that article we just looked at. Diamond's reason to reject Alliance Entertainment was down to 1 hour. So we're talking about this because in addition to all of this, these stories about all of the inventory being held at a Diamond comic distributor's warehouse, Diamond is also being bought by, because they probably have a lot of capital, meaning they have facilities, they have trucks, they have equipment in those facilities to move pallets around, forklifts, things like that's capital. for a business. And they probably have a lot of that stuff. Companies would want to have that. Maybe they'll use it, maybe they won't. We'll have to see. So, in the background of all of this stuff where they're doing this bankruptcy and they're holding all of this product from these vendors, they're also trying to get bought. They're bought, and it's through auction. So at the auction of Diamond Comic Distributors as part of the Chapter 11 bankruptcy procedures, so a judge probably said, okay, you have to auction your company off. The winning bidder was Alliance Entertainment, or AENT. That's different than Alliance Games, which they owned. Alliance Entertainment is another one of these big companies that they distribute collectible stuff. They paid over $70 million, higher than the next best joint bidders of Ad Populum Sparkle Pop and Universal Distributors. So Universal is the one we said that had bought the Diamond UK and the Alliance Games. So they outbid these, but then after announcing AENT as the winner, Diamond suddenly announced that the backup bidders had been chosen instead. So what happened? A number of sealed transcripts from previous court hearings earlier this year have now been unsealed, and they make for riveting reading. We've already looked at the details of the auction itself, but what happened next? As it turns out, Diamond's reason for rejecting AENT were that its nose was briefly out of joint for all of 1 hour. In the transcript, Mark Minuti of legal firm Saul Ewing, working for Diamond Comics, the debtors, stated during an April 2nd, 2025, so this is Diamond's lawyer, there remained a significant disagreement related to whether or not Alliance Entertainment's bid included payment to the debtors for prepaid inventory. That's in regard to the stuff that Diamond has ordered, hadn't arrived, and hadn't been paid for yet. So apparently Diamond pays for, they also pay, in addition to selling things on consignment, they also have agreements to buy inventory, and then they take it and then they sell it themselves. So Diamond ordered this stuff. It hadn't arrived yet. It hadn't been paid for yet at the time of the auction. Who was on the hook for it? After all, it had a value estimated at approximately $4.3 million. Alliance Entertainment stated that its bid hadn't included that amount, but the debtor stated that it had. Minuti told the judge. So they're arguing over whether Alliance Entertainment, when they made the bid for the auction, if they are going to take that obligation or not. And so there's a big court battle between this Sparkle Pop and Alliance Entertainment as to who can now buy Diamond Distributors. So that kept going, and they talk about it, and they talk about this quite a bit. So for want of an hour, and because A&T was negotiating hard, even though they caved on every point, Diamond, the debtor entity in this bankruptcy, chose Universal and Ad Populum for less money and all the aggregation that had come since. All right, so there's that going in the background too, which complicates this whole matter with Diamond and all this stock that they're holding in their warehouse. So now Diamond can come out and say, well, we are having an argument between people that tried to buy us, and that's a legal matter, and we can't actually get rid of anything in our warehouse until that proceeding gets taken care of. All right, let's go to the next article now. And comic publishers assemble against Diamond Comic Distributors, July 17th, so this is about a week later. So comic book publishers assemble. The debtors, which is Diamond, has been planning to sell off consigned inventory for hundreds of comic book publishers, yes. So a bunch of these guys got together, calling themselves the Ad Hoc Committee of Co-Signers, or on consignment, which Bleeding Cool can reveal includes our own publisher, Avatar Press. They deny Diamond's claim on their stock, entirely, and that Maryland lost. So this must be in Maryland, which we happen to be in Maryland here. We're near your nation's capital. So Maryland law says the stock is theirs and unsellable without permission. So these warehouses must be in Maryland. Indeed, they state that at least one consignor or consignor, and possibly more marked their stock with placards and notices that unambiguously stated that the respective stock was the property of the respective consignor, Herman and Gear Communications, So this is a bunch of companies. And then there's another group called the Consignment Group, led by Dynamite Entertainment, and including Aspen, Black Mass, Heavy Metal, Onai, blah, blah, blah. So there's a bunch of different companies here that are getting together. They've all filed in court, and now there's a big fight. So Diamond files with the court saying, we own all this inventory. We have control over it. We can sell it. We need the judge to tell us we can sell it. And this is after their bankruptcy. So because they're essentially, when you declare Chapter 11 bankruptcy, you are under the control of a judge. So they have to file with this judge for everything. So they file with the judge. They say, we want to sell this stuff. And the judge hasn't come out with a decision yet. And then in the background, we've got Alliance Entertainment and this Star Pop company that's trying to buy Diamond, and those two are having a legal argument over it too. Then we got two groups, Ad Hoc Committee of Consignors and Consignment Group, who have all gotten together. They probably lawyered up, and they have filed with the court to get their stuff back. And it's lawyers that represent consignment companies that have put stuff in Diamond's warehouses on consignment. Okay, so that's July 17th. So we get this one on July 21st. J.P. Morgan Chase reminds, let's get rid of this here. J.P. Morgan Chase reminds Diamond Comics as to who gets the money. Okay. So, Bleeding Cool previously reported on a series of filings from many comic book distributors, Okay. J.P. Morgan Chase, which lent money to Diamond comic distributors before and during their Chapter 11 bankruptcy, stated that while it was okay with this plan in general, it wants to make sure its interests are protected. Their filing states, in part, that the lender has valid, binding, fully perfected, priming, first priority, senior security interest, and lien upon all of the debtor's rights, title, and interest in the consigned inventory and the proceeds resulting from any sale or disposition thereof. So the stuff they're holding, J.P. Morgan Chase has a lien on them, which is a legal action that says you owe us money and you have to pay us. So all these companies, these banks that Diamond has borrowed money from have probably all filed liens, which is just legalese for them saying you owe us money, you have to pay us. And then a judge has to decide who gets paid first. So they're saying that stuff that's in those warehouses is ours. It's ours. We're reminding you that if you sell it, the money has to go to us, JP Morgan Chase, because you owe us money because we lent you money. All right, so that was that. And then on August 20th, and this is the latest, greatest info. And I'm going to go down here, and we're going to check to see what we got here. And I'm going to say, hey, guys, don't forget to hit that like button, too. That's super important. We've got all kinds of commercials coming in. There it is. There's a little X right there. Okay. So on August 20th, Diamond bankruptcy liquidation hearing continued until September 30th, which hasn't happened yet. So the Chapter 11 bankruptcy hearing on liquidation-related matters that has been held these past 3 days did not reach any decisions beyond the ones that were granted 2 days ago. The Diamond UK sale to itself and the stay on the Diamond debtors plans to liquidate stock. So that was the two things that were up for discussion. At issue before the court today, again, was the ad hoc committee's motion. So that ad hoc committee was a group of consigners that have product in a Diamond warehouse. So seeking entry of an order requiring the debtor, Diamond, to assume or reject executory contracts. So as their filing states, this is viewed by the publishers as a key step in their efforts to obtain the return of the consignment inventory. No decision was made by the court today, and this matter has now been continued and will be heard again. So they're going to have another hearing. I believe they had a hearing in July, and then they had another hearing around August 20th, and now they're going to have another hearing on the 30th. So this hearing will be heard again alongside the motion filed by another group of publishers known as the Consignment Group. So there's two different groups. I didn't want to do that. That's one of the hand gestures that my camera will recognize as me putting up the two sign. So the Consignment Group is another group of these consigners. So let's see here. The Consignment Group have filed very similar paperwork with some sections being the same as the ad hoc filings, the other group, and reminds us that first and foremost, it is apparent that Sparkle Pop is selling the stock post May 15th. So remember, Sparkle Pop is one of these companies that was trying to buy Diamond, and it actually was the one that Diamond said, you can buy us. And there's a legal disagreement between Sparkle Pop and Alliance Entertainment, because Alliance Entertainment actually won the auction, but Diamond came back and said no. So supposedly Sparkle Pop has sold some of the stuff that's in the warehouse already. Testified, let's see, Robert Gorin, the debtor's chief restructuring officer, so that's Diamond's chief restructuring officer, testified on August 15th in a deposition that Sparkle Pop has sold more than $2 million of the consignment goods. This is not permissible, particularly when there has been no effective assumption of assignment of the consigners' agreements. And so the consigners do not have an agreement with Sparkle Pop. They have an agreement with Diamond, and Sparkle Pop hasn't effectively or officially bought Diamond yet, according to the bankruptcy judge. So I mean, this is just a big mess. But there it is. So it says, but any decision is going to be some time coming, as the next hearing has been scheduled for the 30th of September to hear both motions. Of course, between now and then, anything could happen. The ad hoc committee was formed from publishers Ablaze, American Mythology, blah, blah, blah. Green Ronin's in there. Paizo's in there. While the Consignment Group is Dark Horse. See if we see anybody else. Heavy Metal, and Onai, and Titan Comics. So a couple big names in there. So, I mean, this has gotten super complex because of the sale. Remember, I wanted to go over that because there was a sale of Diamond, and apparently Diamond signed some contract with Sparkle Pop already that allowed Sparkle Pop to start taking goods from the warehouse and start selling them. But again, the consigners do not have agreements with Sparkle Pop. And then where is that money going to? So if the agreement is that Sparkle Pop can take everything and then sell it, does the money go to Sparkle Pop, or does the money go to the creditors like Chase and JP Morgan Chase and some other banks? All right. And finally, Image settles with Diamond on consignment inventory. This was August 20th. So some of these companies, and I don't think Image was part of the ad hoc committee or the consignment group, Image looks like reached an agreement with Diamond. So it has reached a settlement agreement with Diamond in its dispute over consignment inventory, and a key hearing continues for a third day, August 19th. So the hearing on numerous motions and objections related to Diamond's plan to seize and sell consignment inventory in its warehouse, blah, blah, blah. A number of events led up to the weeks, yes. The amounts, so let's see, Dark Horse joined the consigners, yes. The court approved a key motion. Yes. Tuesday, Image Comics and Diamond filed a proposed settlement of their dispute over the consignment inventory. And this is Image's. This is Image's inventory. Image's situation was a little different from other publishers with consignment inventory in that it argued that Diamond had failed to transfer consignment inventory to Lunar distribution after Image switched distributors in 2023 as requested. So it sounds like Diamond was holding a bunch of inventory, and it's probably going to be toys and things, from Image, and Image came to them and switched distributors to a different one, this Lunar distribution, in 2023, and so that was a violation of their agreement. So that was well before the bankruptcy, yes. The settlement agreement specified that Image had provided a list of inventory that Diamond had agreed to make available for pickup, and that Image was assigning to Diamond its rights to the remaining inventory and any claims against Sparkle Pop for inventory it sold without permission. So remember, Sparkle Pop sold some stuff. So in its July filing, Image said Diamond had $2.9 million worth of Image inventory in its possession, and that the amount it had failed to transfer despite being instructed to do so was $1.23 million. The value of the inventory Image will be able to reclaim was not revealed. So, and that is essentially the last article in this whole saga that has happened with Diamond comic distributors. And this affects the TTRPG space because there are a whole bunch of companies that are being affected by this. I have a friend who is, I am not a lawyer, although I understand quite a bit, but I am not, I am not a lawyer, but I do have a good friend that told me, that is a lawyer, and he said judges normally don't want to cause like a domino effect for bankruptcies where you have a company that has declared bankruptcy and they may owe money to other companies, or they may own or store things for other companies. And if those other companies don't get some kind of restitution, then they themselves also will declare bankruptcy and go out of business. And so there's this domino effect of all these companies going down. And judges typically apparently don't want to do that, but this judge seems to be taking his or her time a lot. Our legal system is not fast, and there are companies that are not, I've said this earlier, there are companies that are big companies that have inventory locked up in these warehouses now, and I personally don't think they can afford it. Goodman Games, Green Ronin Publishing, Roll for Combat, Paizo, and probably a bunch of other little companies that maybe your favorite tabletop role-playing game have stuff that's stuck there. And they work on very little margin, and they cannot afford to have a 3-month interruption to their revenue flow. They have, bills to pay. They've got leases to pay. They've got rent to pay. They've got salaries that they have to pay. Payroll has to be made. They've got employees they've got to pay. All of this. So there's a lot at stake with this. And then you won't see your favorite game on the shelf. I mean, we'll go back to this. This is the inventory for Paizo here. This is it. Right here. This is it. This is their whole inventory for August and their whole inventory for September of new stuff. So their new stuff, a certain percentage of their new stuff is not going to be available for sale, which means that if they're dependent on that revenue to pay bills, to pay lease, to pay loans off, to pay payroll for employees, all that, and Paizo has a union that all of their employees are unionized. So if they're dependent on this, that's an issue. That's a huge issue. So there it is. All right. I said we were going to talk about some weapon mastery stuff, but man, this took a long time to do. We've been on here for 50 minutes. I've been gabbing for 50 minutes. No one has put a comment in, but that's okay. Perhaps you might have a comment you want to put in later on the restream. So we are going to leave you here. That is the end of the stream. I hope everybody enjoyed, and I will catch everybody later.